You keep telling yourself you'll start when the time feels right. When things settle down. When you have more clarity. When you feel more ready. But if you think about it, how many times have you said that already? And how many times did that right time actually show up? Part 1, the pattern you don't question. You probably don't notice this happening right away. Because it sounds reasonable. You tell yourself, I'll start next week. Let me think about it a little more. I just need to get a few things in order first. And none of that feels wrong. It feels responsible. It feels like you're preparing. So you wait. A few days pass. Then a week. Then longer than you expected. And at some point, you come back to it. That thing you said you were going to start. You look at it again. You think about it again. And instead of starting, you adjust the plan. Maybe you change the approach. Maybe you tell yourself you need a better system. Maybe you decide you should wait until things feel clearer. And once again, it sounds reasonable. So you wait again. This doesn't look like a problem at first. It just looks like you're being careful. But if you step back, something keeps repeating. You're not moving forward. You're restarting. Over and over. You think you're getting closer. But you're actually staying in the same place. And it shows up in small, quiet ways. You open something you've been meaning to do. And after a few seconds, you close it. You tell yourself you'll come back when you can focus better. You think about sending a message, making a move, taking a step. And then you stop yourself. Not because you can't. But because it doesn't feel like the right time. You plan it out in your head. You imagine how it should go. You tell yourself you'll do it properly, later. And later feels safer. Because later doesn't require you to act. And that's the part that's easy to miss. Waiting feels productive. But it doesn't move anything. And the more you wait, the more that moment builds up in your head. It starts to feel bigger than it actually is. Heavier than it needs to be. Because now, it's not just about starting. It's about starting after you've already delayed it. And that adds pressure. So when the moment comes again, you hesitate again. And you push it again. And slowly, something shifts. Not in your ability. But in your pattern. You get used to waiting. Used to delaying. Used to telling yourself, I'll do it when the time is right. But if you're honest, you've probably had moments where the time could have been right. Nothing was stopping you. No major obstacle. No real limitation. Just that same hesitation. That same thought. Not yet. And that's the pattern. Not lack of ability. Not lack of understanding. Just a habit of moving the moment further away. Again. Part 2. What's really happening when you wait? You can usually see this more clearly in very specific situations. You set a time in your head. Tomorrow I'll start. This weekend I'll finally do it. And when that time comes, nothing is actually stopping you. You have the time. You know what to do. You even think about it. But something feels off. Not a clear reason. Just a slight hesitation. So instead of starting, you adjust. I'll do it later today. Let me just finish this first. I'll start when I can focus better. And just like that, the moment moves again. Or this. You finally sit down to begin. You open what you need. You look at it. And almost immediately, you feel a kind of pressure. Not because it's impossible. But because starting makes it real. So instead of beginning, you shift your attention. You check something quickly. You organize something small. You tell yourself you're getting ready. And a few minutes later, you're no longer in it. The moment passed. Or this. You think about doing something you've been putting off for a while. And before you act, you start thinking ahead. How should I do this? What if it doesn't go well? What if I don't follow through properly? And instead of starting imperfectly, you decide to wait until you can do it better. And that sounds like a smart decision. But if you look closely, something else is happening. You're not waiting for the right time. You're waiting for the moment to feel easier than it actually is. And that's why it keeps repeating. Because the moment rarely feels easier. It feels the same every time. A little uncomfortable. A little uncertain. A little unclear. And each time you feel that, you push it again. Not because you're lazy. Not because you don't care. But because your mind is trying to reduce discomfort. It's trying to keep things smooth. Predictable. Controlled. So when something feels slightly uncomfortable, it suggests waiting. And that suggestion sounds reasonable. That's why it works. But over time, that pattern creates something else. You stop trusting your own timing. Because your timing keeps moving. You stop believing your own plans. Because your plans keep resetting. And eventually, it doesn't feel like you're choosing to wait. It feels like that's just what you do. The moment gets close. And you delay it. Again. Part 3, what you do when that moment shows up. The change doesn't come from finding the right time. It shows up in the moment you usually delay. You know that moment. You're about to start, and you pause. You're about to act, and you hesitate. You're about to follow through, and something inside you says, "Not yet." That moment happens fast. But it's always there. And if you think about it, you've already felt it many times. That small space where you could begin. Or move it again. Most of the time, you already know what you're about to do. You're going to wait. So instead of trying to change everything, you focus on that point. Just that moment. Because that's where the pattern keeps repeating. A simple way to handle it is this. See it, shorten it, start anyway. First, see it. Not later. Not after you've already delayed it. Right when you feel that hesitation. That small thought. I'll do it later. That's the signal. Most people miss it because it feels normal. You don't. Second, shorten it. This is where things usually break. You give yourself too much time between thinking about it and doing it. You tell yourself you'll start later today. Then later becomes tomorrow. Then tomorrow becomes next week. Instead, shorten that gap. Don't give yourself hours. Don't give yourself days. Give yourself a few minutes. Or even less. You don't need the perfect time. You just need less distance between thought and action. That's the shift. Third, start anyway. Not everything. Just something. If you were going to start later, start now, even briefly. If you were going to wait for clarity, begin without it. If you were going to prepare more, skip that part and take the first step. It won't feel right. That's the point. Because you've been waiting for it to feel right before starting. Now you reverse it. You start first. And let it feel uncomfortable. That's how the pattern breaks. And you've probably had moments where you did this without thinking. Where you just started. Even if it was small. And once you began, something changed. Not everything became easy. But it moved. And that's the part that matters. Because the problem was never your ability. It was the distance between knowing and starting. And the longer that distance is, the easier it is to delay. But when you shorten it, you don't give yourself as much space to avoid it. And over time, something shifts. You stop waiting for the moment to feel right. Because you've experienced that it rarely does. And instead, you start responding to the moment differently. You act sooner. You delay less. You move forward before your mind has time to push it away. Not perfectly. But consistently. And that's what changes everything. Not a better plan. Not better timing. Just what you do in that moment. If you think about it, this has probably been happening longer than you realized. Not in big, obvious ways. In small moments. The moment you were about to start, and didn't. The moment you said you would, but moved it again. The moment you knew you could begin, and chose to wait. None of it felt serious on its own. But it repeated. And over time, it started to shape how things move in your life. Not because you don't care. But because you got used to waiting for something that never really arrives. That right time. And once you see that clearly, it's hard to unsee it. Because now, when that moment shows up again, you'll recognize it. That hesitation. That thought, I'll do it later. And it won't feel automatic in the same way. You'll see the choice. Not a big one. Just a small one. To move it again. Or to begin. And you've probably already felt the difference between those two. When you wait, it feels easier at first. But afterward, something stays unfinished. When you start, even in a small way, it doesn't feel perfect. But it moves. That movement matters. Because the more you begin instead of delay, the less this becomes something you struggle with. And the more it becomes how you respond. Not when everything feels right, but when it doesn't. And over time, that changes something important. You stop waiting for the right time. And you start using the time you already have.